Thank you so much. My name is Brooke Ellison, and I am an assistant professor here at Stony Brook. And for the years that I've been on this planet, I have really, in effect, lived two lives. When I was much younger, for the first really 11 years of my life was very different than it is today. I did a lot of the things that children often do, a lot of the physically active things that children often do. I was involved in karate and I danced since I was 2 years old. I was involved in Little League Baseball and sang in the church choir, and that was really how I defined my life and how I understood myself and defined my identity, really. But all of that changed when I was 11 years old, when I was walking home for my first day of 7th grade, and I was hit by a car. Which was an accident that left me paralyzed from my neck down and dependent on a ventilator to breathe. And actually, it was this very hospital here at Stony Brook that saved my life. And I remember thinking at that time that all the things that I had really used to define my life were gone, and that really that much of my life was over. But it didn't really take very long thereafter for me to understand the calculation error that I was making, that I wasn't able to do a lot of the things that I could do before, but I still was very much the same person I always was and could set the same goals and have the same dreams for myself as I had always had. And when I realized that for myself, that was how I wanted other people to understand me as well. And there was really no medical degree or really any kind of degree that could define or predict how my life would evolve. And as you heard, I went on to graduate from Harvard with my undergraduate and master's degrees, and now I'm a professor here at Stony Brook. And my life over the past 25 years has been kind of this strange combination of setting goals for myself and then trying to find proactive ways to reach those goals. And I've learned very kind of, I guess, visibly and profoundly that my life has been full of challenge, but out of challenge can come really incredible things. So the paralysis that I face, I think, can be used as almost like a metaphor for all the kinds of paralysis that people can experience in their lives, and really that society faces all the time. There's paralysis of the spirit, which can leave us kind of discouraged or feeling disempowered to take on the obstacles that we face. There's paralysis of the mind that can leave us ignorant to all the different ways that people live their lives and to new understandings about the world. And then there's paralysis of the heart, which often manifests itself in fear. And then when you add to this all of the different kinds of challenges that we face, whether they're economic or familial or personal, we can all feel very discouraged to take on the challenges that the world faces and do the work that we need to do. But I've come to understand that fear is always so much more disabling than the events that we individually face. And what gets us through these times of difficulty is really hope. So hope is really a concept that's used a lot. It's used in campaigns and really very ubiquitously, so much so that its significance has really become eroded in a lot of ways. And when you're experiencing trauma, it can sometimes feel like it's just too far to reach, really very elusive. Actually, it was Emily Dickinson who had written that hope is a thing with feathers, and we can understand that really in multiple ways, right? It could elevate us or lift us up to new heights, or at the same time, it can be something that is, gossamer, like very ethereal and very hard to grab onto. And I think far too often we view it that latter way, that it's something that we can't really, grasp. But it's had such a profound effect on my life that when I was an undergraduate at Harvard, that's what I studied when I wrote my senior honors thesis, the role of hope in people's resilience and their ability to overcome difficult times. So there's this weird and delicate characteristic about hope It's something that is threatened by challenge, but it's really only, it presents itself in times of challenge. It's something that we need to rely on ourselves, but it needs to be fostered by those who are around us. Sometimes it's thought of as synonymous with optimism, but really the two concepts can be viewed as very, very different, with optimism being kind of, a personal, kind of predisposition or attitude, whereas hope is something that's really tested and action-oriented. So they're two very, very different kinds of concepts. So what does it mean to have hope? Or really to be hopeful? And I think we could kind of understand it by first talking about what it means to not have hope. So when we're facing difficulty really of any kind, it's very easy to think of it. I think that just because we're facing one challenge in one life or in one part of our lives, or we're limited in one aspect of our life, that it's really all-consuming. That just because we can't do one certain thing, we can't do anything. And for me, that was kind of realizing that because I couldn't move my body or do some of the things that I could do when I was younger, didn't mean that I couldn't do anything. So very often hopelessness manifests itself in this feeling of being all-consuming. And then there's a feeling of loss of control, or that your life really isn't of your own, or you don't have any capacity to make your own decisions. So now that I mentioned what hope is not, what hope is, at least as far as I've come to understand it, really involves three very critical things. And I've used the acronym of COPE as a mnemonic device for compartmentalization, orientation, and personal empowerment. So when I say compartmentalization, what does that mean? So when we are facing a challenge, like I mentioned before, it's easy to feel like it's all-consuming, that our lives are just being taken over by this one particular challenge. But just like we need to kind of focus or try to limit the spread of an infection, we need to view a challenge that way as well, that if we just compartmentalize a challenge, then it's much easier to tackle. That we can still do other things, still take part in the world in other ways. And that leads to orientation, or really reorientation of our focus. That just because we face this challenge doesn't mean that we're precluded from doing other things. And sometimes it's actually because of the challenge that we face that we're opened up to all different worlds that we never would have thought of before or conceived of really in any way. So when we change our focus from what we've lost to what we still have, or what we've even gained by virtue of a challenge, then we have tremendous potential. And that fosters right into personal empowerment. And there have been researchers like, the psychologist Snyder, who based his theory on hope on this idea of personal empowerment and personal agency, that we can set goals for ourselves and actually achieve them if we put our minds to them. And all of these things, all of these factors are central to what hope means. Now it's certain that none of these things can be done on our own. And the road to hope, or the road through hope, can really only be fostered when we work together, when we find the right people to rely on, or when we're experiencing times of trouble, that we seek out the people who can help shoulder the burden, or be that person to shoulder the burden for somebody else. And as far as I can tell, there's no greater gift than that we can give to each other. There's no greater responsibility than that to what we have to each other. So thank you very much.